The Holy War doctrine has allowed nations to achieve extraordinary feats never done before in history. From the staggering conquest of Asia, all the way to Spain by the Muslims, to the absolute domination of the New World by the Catholics. It's without a doubt that when a religion evolves the notion of a salvation through death in the battlefield, its followers are possessed by an almost superhuman fervor. But what really is a holy war? As per the Cambridge Dictionary, holy war is a war fought to defend religious beliefs or to force others to follow a different religion. This definition is very surface level and lacks the depth we are going to need for this video's analysis. There are countless holy wars that have been claimed to be fought for God, but events like jihads and the Crusades are very distinct and stand out clearly in history from the rest. A better definition would be the following. A true holy war offers salvation to a fallen soldier fighting non-believers, no matter their ethics, way of life, or previous actions of the individual. The religious head declaring it promises a rewarding afterlife for any person partaking in the struggle. Contrary to popular belief, the Eastern Roman Orthodox Church also battled with this notion during the 10th century AD, about 150 years before the First Crusade was declared by Pope Urban II. It was during this time that the Eastern Roman Empire finally pushed back the invading Arab forces and was able to bring the war to their doorstep, reversing 300 years of constant humiliations. The balance of power was shifting, morale was high, and the momentum was finally in the hands of the Byzantines. The Orthodox people were out for vengeance, led by none other than the warrior monk Nikephoros II Phokas, also known as Pale Death of the Saracens. In the middle of the 10th century, the Eastern Roman Empire is in terrible shape. Constant Arab invasions have stripped the empire of all of its provinces in the Near East and Egypt. All the while rampant piracy and raiding have crippled its economy. The Balkans did not fare better either. With most of the troops focused in the east, the Magyars have been launching devastating raids into the European provinces, while the Bulgarian state steadily increased its influence and power. In the west, state and patriarchal authority over Italy and the Pope, at the time still part of the Church, kept slipping away, with the Holy Roman Emperor and the Arabs wanting to carve a peace for themselves on the peninsula. Even though things have been somewhat stabilized with the decentralization of the Islamic Caliphate, the capture of Crete by Andalusian political dissidents put Byzantium on borrowed time, with its enemies from north, west, east, and now south, slowly chipping away at its provinces and influence. The conquest of Crete in particular was so important as it utterly neutralized trade flowing through the Aegean and into Constantinople, while it led to the depopulation of coastal cities and islands due to raiding and enslavement. The utter demoralization and fear of the empire's citizens was apparent. No place was safe, and the empire was slowly dying. Thousands martyrs have been canonized during this period, most for refusing to convert to Islam. These include notably soldiers. Warrior saints were nothing new for Orthodox Christianity, with St. George and the patron St. Demetrius of Thessaloniki being two of the most prominent. Notably in the 9th century, the 42 martyrs of Amorion also shook the Byzantine world with their sacrifice. They were captured by the Arab Muslims when they finally broke through and sacked the city of Amorion in 838 AD. After suffering in captivity for 7 years, they still refused to convert and were finally executed in 845. However, in all of these cases, the martyrs have died for refusing to deny their faith when captured, and not while dying, while actively fighting the unbelievers. Despite the official stance of the Church, being careful who to canonize and under which conditions, it was common for soldiers dying in battle to be honored alongside actual official martyrs. In the 10th century, an order of service or akoluthia is composed, which asks God for remembrance and mercy for generals, officers, and soldiers who died in combat or in harsh captivity. This text is part of the Sinai Greek Triodian manuscript complex, functioning as a liturgical commemoration celebrated after battles or on memorial occasions. This is very unusual for official Orthodox ritual, especially when it honors those who actively fought next to those who actually perished in captivity as martyrs. Although it does not honor the fallen as actual martyrs, they are put right next to them making their sacrifice at least comparable. During this period, a general based in Thessaloniki, perhaps inspired by the warrior Saint Demetrius, patron of Thessaloniki, was curiously celebrated as a martyrical figure by the locals. General Katakalon, not to be confused with Leo Katakalon of the 9th century, died while actively fighting the pagan Magyars to protect the city of Thessaloniki and was honored unusually for it. In one of the funerary poems, the writer calls him Martyrs Stratilatis, martyr or general, curiously granting him both titles, unsure of which would describe him and being cautious. The other epigram is not so subtle, as it clearly calls him O endoxos martis to Theou, the glorious martyr of God, throwing away all pretenses and urging other generals to imitate him. These unprecedented pieces of literature place a soldier that died in battle and not in captivity at the same level as actual saints who martyred for Christ for refusing to convert, even if not officially by the Church, at least locally by the people. We can imagine similar events happening all over the Byzantine world, with both the Orthodox Church cautiously honoring the fallen and the local communities actually honoring them as martyrs. Again, all these developments happen 150 to 200 years before the First Crusade is declared by the Catholics. The sentiment of a true holy war is boiling up and increasingly adopted by the Eastern Romans. War and salvation were now widely connected, even if not officially declared so by the Church. The empire was in a pitiful state. The Muslims and Magyars still conducted devastating raids into her heartland. Large areas have been depopulated or destroyed, and the people left for the mountains. It was in this state of uncertainty and death that Emperor Romanos II orchestrated the most risky campaign in Byzantine history since the Heraclean invasion of Mesopotamia some 300 years earlier. He concentrated the last of the empire's troops and resources to retake the island of Crete in an all-in gamble to save the empire, or if it failed, bring up its unavoidable ruin. Nikephoros Phokas, a certain commander from the eastern frontier, was tasked with leading this force. After 10 bloody months and hundreds of thousands of deaths, the island has capitulated, and for the first time in centuries, the momentum was on the side of the Romans. Nikephoros made sure to eradicate all Islamic influence from the island, executing thousands of collaborating civilians, torching towns and villages, and destroying mosques as an act of vengeance against the population that brought so much despair on the people of the Aegean for over a century. Soon later, Nikephoros becomes emperor after the unexpected death of Romanos, and he goes on a campaign of devastation against the Arabs of Cilicia and Syria, recapturing key Roman cities and laying waste to others, massacring hundreds of thousands in the process. In the sack of Aleppo particularly, Muslim sources claim that nobody survived the massacre. All captured soldiers were beheaded, and no civilian was spared, not even women and children, earning the nickname Pale Death of the Saracens. However, he commanded the peaceful reconquest of Antioch, orders that have been ignored. Yet still it showed that he planned on conquering the important cities for orthodoxy peacefully, while seeing to the eradication of any Muslim trace from the Near East. Clearly, deep resentment has been building up in the heart of the Romans, exploding in acts of unspeakable barbarity against the Muslims, who have been doing the same all these years against them. It seemed that the religion of meekness and endurance was adopting a martial character similar to the Islamic. His campaigns have been so successful that prophetic rumors have been circulating in Western European courts, as Liutprand of Cremona reports. As long as this Nikephoros lived, the Assyrians would not be able to resist the Greeks. His reputation of being a messianic figure also stemmed from his extraordinarily ascetic way of life. He was deeply popular with the Orthodox monks as he built countless monasteries, including the great Lavra monastery of Mount Athos, with documents still surviving today preparing his eventual retirement from the imperial throne to become a monk himself. He adopted an extreme fasting diet, which was persuaded to loosen up a bit, slept on the floor, and vowed to stay celibate after the death of his first wife and son. It was very unusual for an emperor to lead an army himself. Even strangely so, Nikephoros not only led his men himself, but during campaigns, he chose to live under the same conditions as the soldiers, enduring the same hardships. There are instances where Nikephoros is seen taking the side of his soldiers during disputes, showing extreme favoritism to the common man at arms. The army and Nikephoros had a special kind of relationship, one rarely expected from a pious man. He protected the peasant class by keeping the laws of his predecessors, while he heavily taxed the aristocratic class to fund his endless wars against the Saracens. All these aspects of his way of life and decision-making point to us that he probably saw himself as a type of warrior leader with exemplary piety, ordained by God to punish the non-believers ruthlessly and bring prosperity to the Christian lands. Somebody like King David from the Old Testament, which was very popular at the time in Byzantium. It's in the context of this volatile environment that Nikephoros dared the unexplainable, something that the common people silently believed, but nobody had the courage to say it out loud. Nikephoros asked Patriarch Polyeuktos to canonize as martyrs all fallen soldiers, marines and officers that died during his campaign of the reconquest of Crete. He believed that this event was what saved Christendom, and the fallen should be sainted perhaps because he truly believed they were martyred, or perhaps as to be exemplified to boost the war effort. The Orthodox Church has always placed salvation through one's relationship with Christ, and Nikephoros provided another path to achieve it. The writing was on the wall. If an emperor saw fit, he could demand of the Church to boost the morale of soldiers by declaring them saints if they die, equalizing the playing field in the eternal war against the Muslims. The pressure on the Church was immeasurable. On one hand, the emperor who asked for it was very popular with the commoners and troops. The emperor was also very popular with the monks and lived an extraordinary ascetic life. The understanding that if the frontier falls, the Orthodox will be ruled by the Muslims and other heathens, so every bit of morale boost would be of great value. The opportunity to spread Orthodox influence in now Muslim-occupied lands and rile up the numerous still Orthodox conquered peoples against their Islamic rulers. Yet, on the other hand, the core beliefs of the Orthodox Church would be betrayed, as the center of orthodoxy, union with Christ, would be reduced to the whims of whoever was in power to declare a new way to salvation whenever he pleased, and change and shape the Church to his image, instead of the other way around. The Orthodox Church is notorious for being unchanging and constant, with sacraments still performed today, exactly as they did in the 5th century. If the Church chose to bend to even a most pious emperor's will, it would utterly destroy the image of eternal truth it claims to uphold. Yet wouldn't the survival of the empire and the reconquest of the Holy Lands be as so, or even more important than adding a new doctrine to the faith? Wouldn't the religion's evolution to include martial martyrdom make the Byzantine Empire, along with the Orthodox Church, the most influential and powerful union the world has ever seen? The official reply does not survive, aside from some unreliable later chronicles accounts. We know today, however, that such doctrine was never really adopted by the Orthodox Church, even if it was proposed by an emperor who most monks even today still venerate as saint. The true holy war doctrine soon died with Nikephoros in 969. He was declared a martyr for the faith by these monks, soon after being brutally assassinated by his nephew. Even though his successors were mostly successful in their wars against the Muslims, they were not able to permanently neutralize the Islamic threat. And even though the Arabs were never kicked out of the Holy Lands entirely, their era of Mediterranean dominance was slowly fading away, with Byzantium still standing strong and expanding in the late 10th century. We can never know for certain how history would evolve had the Orthodox adopted a Crusade-style ideology for salvation. Perhaps they could conquer the entirety of the Near East and Egypt, still largely Orthodox at that point. We know what the Crusaders achieved by being outnumbered, composed of multiple ethnicities, fighting an enemy they never faced before at the other side of their world, and with barely any supply lines. We can only imagine how similar religious fervor would serve a still strong empire, with large manpower at the time, technological superiority, fighting at their borders an enemy they have learned how to beat, and with popular support in most Muslim territories. Perhaps a new era would unfold, one with a resurgent Roman Empire under the Patriarchate of Constantinople, spreading its influence deep into Europe. Perhaps the Pope and the Italians would be forced to submit to Constantinople before the schism has time to really develop further, and so the schism never happens. Perhaps the Renaissance starts much earlier with a combined Greek-Italian effort, and the Americas are conquered with the blessing of the Orthodox Patriarch. The whole world brought under ruthless Orthodox rule, remolded and remade in the image of Constantinople. Perhaps.